All right.
And that was the moment where fun dies.
Yes, the moment where fun dies. Because now let's talk about now let's talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League. I love how someone just laughing through all this.
I'm feeling like certain people just cocking their guns, loading the bullets, just
boy.
ready.
I just literally drank more water for this.
Was it that audible?
All right, so to begin, right, I'm gonna use the same narrative like structure that they had, prologue, part 1, part 2, all that kind of stuff, right? So this section is called Prologue. My prologue. It's not a movie prologue. It's just my prologue because I just want a prologue, goddammit, right? So I will just start off. Not gonna spend too long because you have to get to the movie, of course, right? Just my thoughts on Zack Snyder's contribution to the DCEU, right? So, of course, he's made 3 films. That would be Man of Steel 2013, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice 2016, and technically Justice League from 2017, and this new version, for 2021, which technically counts as one film, right? So yeah, he's made a trilogy of films, right? He's trying to be Nolan, right? Christopher Nolan with his Dark Knight trilogy, right? So here's the thing, right? With Man of Steel, I know even within this circle of friends talking here, there are detractors to Man of Steel, right? It's not a show that I hate. I don't hate it. Like Ricardo, well, I hope he still does. I defend the show. I get what he was going for with it, right? It is flawed in terms of just structure and just tone and stuff like that, and emo Superman basically. But for one thing though, I love Hans Zimmer's score for this. It is one of the best scores I've ever heard from him ever. Like I think that the Man of Steel score itself, like the triumphant one, just brings chills to me every time I hear it, and I'll bring it up in my review of Justice League. But I kind of see it as, this is a modern sort of different take on the character. Like we've seen this character incarnated different in different yet similar scenarios. So here's somebody actually trying to do something a little bit different. So I mean, for what it's worth, I like the show. I didn't love it. It wasn't a strong way to kick off the DCEU. But I was like, all right, this is what they're going for. But there's room for improvement. All right, okay. And then we got Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I will never forget first time watching this. Ricardo, you were there with me, my other friends. And I was baffled at some of the decisions made in the show, from that infamous nightmare sequence, which I'll bring up later on, to the whole Martha thing, which has become a meme now, you know what I mean? Save Martha! Like that.
Why did you say that name?
Why did you say that name? Right? But even though I didn't hate the show back then, that's the theatrical cut, I was like, okay, this is they tried, like they were trying something, but they missed the mark. They tried. Okay. Maybe when this ultimate cut came out, because when we first saw the theatrical cut, we was like, yeah, clearly they cut stuff out. Hopefully the theatrical cut will make things better, right? And I saw it, and even though I was still a little fated, it still didn't really add anything at all to the table. It's similar to like what the extended cut of Suicide Squad did. It just made the flaws of the theatrical cut way more glaring, in my opinion. And then, well, in preparation for this, because I wanted to watch over Man of Steel, I wanted to watch over the original cut of Justice League, which I'll get into in a bit, right? But because at the time I only saw the ultimate cut of BVS, and now it's a movie that I could wholeheartedly say is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Like I hated it. Like with the ultimate cut, didn't like it, right? But it wasn't like venomous hate. But now seeing it here, or 5 years since after its release, yeah, I kind of hate this show. Really because of how unnecessarily incoherent it is, now painfully pointless it all boils down to. So all this elaborate scheme and all this thing with Jimmy and terrorists and people, soldiers getting killed and all these conspiracy stuff though, basically being this long-winded plan of Lex Luthor because he daddy leave him, and because of that he lost his faith in God. So I believe Superman is a god and God is dead. So here's what. To prove my theory, I gotta have Batman now beat you so I could prove that God is dead. That's what you're basing. That's what you're basing the fight between two iconic characters off of. Well, I don't believe in God, so I just want these two characters to fight just to prove that. Like, come the hell on, man.
There's something in this film that makes that film now worse.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna bring it up.
Yeah.
It's
I have a feeling I know it is. I have a feeling I know it is.
I know too.
Yeah. But also too, it was just how joyless it felt. It just felt like they just missed the point of, the Dark Knight Returns, which yes, they pulled inspiration from, right? And it just ended up being just this joyless, dull torture fest, basically. And then it was made even worse by that score that Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL made with, which literally felt like I was just being bludgeoned over the head over and over with a sledgehammer. That bomb, 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 bomb. And you telling me this is the team, this is the core of where all your music gonna come from? That bomb, 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 bomb. Come on, man, Jed. And it's just
Yes, it is.
all these decisions put into this one film, though, and it's so baffling at how bad it is, though. So, all right, bad movie. Moving on. Suicide Squad was just as bad, if not worse. So I'm not even gonna touch on Suicide Squad. So it don't even matter. Wonder Woman was literally a breath of fresh air. It was the light shining in the clouds, and still remains my favorite movie. And then Justice League came out, right? And we were hearing little rumblings of things behind the scenes. Zack's leaving because his daughter committed suicide and all that kind of stuff. Josh Whedon coming in to fill in the blanks and all that kind of stuff. And I saw it and I reviewed it. I had some of you guys there to review it with me. I kind of appreciate it for what it was in terms of, okay, we kind of gain a slightly lighter tone, from what we got. But basically I was comparing it to BVS now. But over the years, I never really revisited that film now. And the more I thought about it,
did anybody here ever watch it more than once? I'm very curious.
I swear you all did. I swear you all did.
No, I haven't.
If we're talking about Justice League, I have. I actually have it here in digital format for posterity, but I have.
All right. Ricardo, you saw it already?
I saw it a second time for research purposes. That's it.
Oh, okay.
I saw it. When it was coming out in theaters, I took one look at the trailers and went and saw Ragnarok instead. And then and then later, I only revisited it. Oh goodness, it was pre-pandemic. I finally wanted to just get it out of the way and see it. It was about as bad as I was expecting, and moved on with my life. I have seen it once, never again.
It's really one of those shows that you just see once. You kind of like okay, I get to see Flash do thing and see Cyborg do thing, but ultimately you kind of forget it because of just how bland certain things were. Some narrative decisions that I'll bring up here in this cut that just didn't land with me at all, and just the feel of it, just feeling way too rushed. It felt once again like the theatrical cut of BVS, like things were just removed, and it's that like stuff was shut, so we kind of have to accept this jumbled film as it was. But it's just one of those things that kind of came and went, right? And then from there, the hits came. Like Aquaman, Shazam, Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 94. But now we get to but now we get to 2021. Now I should say when DC what do you call it, by the online event that they had, then the multiverse Fandom. Right. And they showed the first trailer for Justice League Snyder Cut. You were like, what? We getting this? Okay, all right.
Which everybody expected.
Yeah. I mean, eventually Snyder would have to dust his boots and come back and finish his film, right? Which is what he did, right? But last thing I want to say before we get to your thoughts on Snyder, because I haven't really brought up Snyder, right? Zack Snyder, to me, right? We've all been introduced to him through, Dawn of the Dead from 2004, which still remains one of the best horror remakes. I really dug how
remakes ever.
Yeah, it just it was visceral as hell, though. It was edgy. It was in your face with it, though, and it just really came from somebody who genuinely loved, George A. Romero's films, right? When 300 dropped in 2007, though, that was a revelation for me. I never saw it in my life. It still remains one of my all-time favorite movies. I own that on Blu-ray. I don't care. I love that film, right? But from there, I was like, oh, this is what Snyder could do, which basically is like, I could take the medium of comic book and really show it to you on big screen and really show it in a way that, literally, like, you really see a comic book come to life now. So when Watchmen came, though, that was when I was like, all right, Snyder is a director I should really be looking out for. Like this man could just change the game as far as not so much filmmaking in general. Like I'm not going to compare this man to Spike Lee. Also, by the way, today is his birthday, so happy birthday, Spike Lee.
Happy birthday, Spike.
Happy birthday.
Or Steven Spielberg, like we're not comparing them to that, but I'm talking about modern action filmmakers, right? You know what I mean? Like I would even compare it to like a Tarantino. Not as yet, right?
No.
You have to have more hits.
Hell no.
He have to have more
or a Cameron.
hits
I
in
like
his-
no.
Right, or James Cameron. He had to have more hits in his oval before I could say, yeah. But in terms of, this could be the next stage of action filmmaking, now I was looking to it with Zack Snyder now. So, but I wouldn't lie though, I felt that he dropped the ball with Sucker Punch. Maybe if I look at it again, I might like it, but I just hated that story. Love the
There was
visuals,
no
but
ball
I
with
hate.
Sucker
I
Punch.
don't even understand it.
Yeah, there was. This story made no sense.
There was
All
no
that
ball.
guy was trying to say.
There was no ball to drop. There's no story there. It's just
Yeah.
it's visuals. It's all
to me-
visuals.
Literally.
Yeah, to me, it was him trying to let people know I love heavy metal. I love the 1981 heavy metal
I
and
do
movie.
too, but
Let
I
me
rather
make a
watch
heavy
a
metal
heavy
movie,
metal
please.
movie
And that's it.
again.
Yeah.
It really did feel like, hey, I want to make heavy metal. Look, you'll be hot chicks with samurai swords, right? The guns. Look at that, right? But yeah, he real dropped the ball with that. There was the Guardians with the owl stuff, which I saw, and
That I quite like.
which was cool. But I never got back to
Yeah.
it, right? But to me,
Thought
when
about that, to be honest.
when he got back in my graces, though, for better or for worse, was with Man of Steel. Because all right, well, he learned the lessons. He's still about that comic book adaptation life. So all right, he did his thing. But then it was just him dropping the ball once again with BVS now. So yeah, he is still a director that I defend though in terms of action filmmaking, right? I dig his style, the stuff that he does on screen though. But I know at some points, even in this more praised films, there's points where it's like, all right, does this scene or this shot need to be this stylized? Like it need to be in slow mo? Like really? You know what I mean? But I know you guys have a love-hate relationship with the man, so yeah, take it
I
away.
have a hate relationship with the man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Ricardo, take it away. Your history with how you see Zack Snyder, his contribution to the DCU.
All right, what makes what it's not so much him per se, but because of his style and aesthetic and style of filmmaking and how he tells story, his fan base has become completely insufferable.
Yes.
Right?
And to be fair, I'm not part of that fan base. I'm not part of that.
So,
the Snyder cut must be released. I'm not. No.
Yeah, and his filmmaking, and the kind of films he does, and what they're trying to talk about, and what they're trying to say. Like, look, I'm not gonna say he's Lenny Riefenstahl or anything like that, but like he's a person who.
Wow, the name you calling there, boy.
Yeah, but the type of people he feeds into is kind of to me there. Like, it's no surprise when people try to connect him to Ayn Rand, for example. He has a very, very clear neoclassical aesthetic.
He does.
You might explain to the audience what neoclassicism is.
It appeals to like old style, as an old art style. That's all it is. It's just an art style that appeals to non-abstract, very clear imagery, usually involving the human form, usually involving the approach of things like, so if you see all these statues or everything like that, that's what it is. Very European. Right. I won't go as far as saying Eurocentric, but it's something along those lines. Anyway, basically he feeds into a particular audience, and because of that, and all those films are like that. Like, look, I like 300, but 300 have some kind of bullshit undertones. Like, I admit that, right?
I know. But shut your brain off, watch people say, this is where we fight. This is right. Where they die.
No, but that's part of the problem too. Right? It's the shut your brain off part, right?
Okay. And
But
I guess the wrestling WWE inspired dialogue, which I don't know. I still fuck with. But
anyway, so it is a lot of and this whole reframing of history and that kind of stuff, and his style of storytelling appeals to that. With Man of Steel, everything kind of came to a hilt with Man of Steel because on the one end, when I was watching that film, I immediately thought, "Way boy, they're trying to do Neocon Superman, right?"
Yep.
Okay. Let's see where it's gonna go. And I generally defend the film except for one thing. You know what it is? It's Parkent. Parkent is what it did with Parkent is completely unacceptable.
Lord,
right? All the other things I could handle, right? Because it's like, oh, I would just tweak this or handle that or tweak this or the other, but they cannot do that with Parkent, dog. That is the thread. That is the thread that unravels Superman if you do that with Parkent. I had a big argument, big back and forth with somebody online with this, and the simple answer is this, right? If you interfere with Parkent or Markent in that way, then you undermine Superman. You undermine what Superman is at his core. And if you're gonna change Superman and have him not be deontic and be utilitarian, then what you have is just a variation of Homelander. It's not Superman anymore. The whole point of Superman as a character is that he has to be an exception to that type of reasoning.
Yes.
That type of risk analysis. Right? That's for people. Superman has to be super rational. Right? Simple. Right? If you don't do that, you have thing, and it has to be Parkent. It can't be Jor-El, because if you make it Jor-El as the quote unquote deontic figure to follow, then you're tying Superman's morality to his power, right? It has to be. It has to come from a place of humility. That's the purpose of Parkent and Markent. That's their purpose. You change that, you undermine the whole story. That's why Man of Steel, it's the load bearing, the lodestone on the whole thing. You pull that out, the whole thing could collapse. That's exactly what happened, in my opinion. I defend that movie, but I would have reshoot that shit. Anyway, so when this film came and went, and I was watching the arguments play itself on and as way, and I realized both people kind of talking past each other. But I was telling myself, they're on top of this thread. Look all the arguments they're making against him. That is Lex Luthor dialogue for the next movie, boy. And then then Batman v Superman came, and it was, to me, it's a complete disaster. Absolutely hated it. It doesn't work. The ultimate cut doesn't improve the film all that much. It just makes Lex Luthor's plan move from completely incoherent to just stupid.
It does.
It doesn't help the movie or anything like that. By the time Batman v Superman came and went, I was like, well, that is it. It have no recovering from this. This is too bad. And so by the time Justice League came along, I kind of didn't care. Like, I was like, and then the whole thing with Joss Whedon and that back and forth. Now, I know we dragging Joss Whedon nowadays, but like, look, it had a bunch of shit in that movie that I really liked. Like that wasn't in this version. And I was like, yeah, Joss Whedon kind of try a thing. And like, I will say, and this is not a defense of Snyder, but I'll just give a couple things when we actually start to do the full review. But I want to say is that they should have never released Justice League in that form.
Here we go.
They should have waited and let Snyder put out this version and then have a better, clearer version. And then I'm going to mention a couple things later. But that's me and Snyder. Snyder is just a person who I do respect him a lot as a filmmaker. I do think he has a very clear style and approach to storytelling. But this is the last point, and then we'll get to the review. Look, I just wish that I keep asking the question, where was Alan Burnett with this, right? My fantasy alternate universe is, what if Dwayne McDuffie was still alive and was the Kevin Feige of the DCEU and was guiding Snyder in terms of a vision? Imagine how amazing that would have been, right? It rough. Snyder he's a person who just don't understand the material. He just needed better consultation with the material. He needed better consultation. Get Bruce Timm and the Alan Burnett people on this stuff, and just for world building. Don't give Snyder ideas. Snyder is not a person for ideas. The problem with Snyder is that he acting as if he acting as if he's giving us something new, and it's like, bro, all you're doing is just reinventing the wheel with a lot of this stuff, and then you're not giving us a wheel. You're just giving us a janky octagon, right? It's not even that. Right? It's not even that. And that's basically it. I know it was a behind-the-scenes drama involving some geeks and gamers thing nowadays. I know what's going on with that exactly. But I heard there's some drama. I ain't getting into that. But it's funny, before I understand, all of these his weirdo fan base seem to have turned on him because he kind of threw them under the bus. because of the whole with
Yep.
his not anti-Asian stuff going on right now. So I remember his daughter was Asian, so it's like, well, he kind of he kind of distance himself from that. But I ain't getting into all of that. Anyway, when we get into the actual review, I'll just mention my thing on the top, and then we'll go through. Yeah.
All right, Alice, quick thoughts on Zack Snyder and his contribution to the DCEU. Like what do you think about the guy and what he's done for the culture, if you will?
What he's done.
What have you done?
My thing is, it's not like I'm not a big person in terms of let me run down this director or that director or whatever. I kind of just watch a movie and I'm like, oh, that's the director, okay, and then you see his style or whatever it is. So I did look at 300. It really wasn't my cup of tea and those kind of things. I looked at Watchmen, I enjoyed it, but the thing about it is, Zack Snyder, I really do have a kind of love-hate relationship with him, because where I like some of the things that he has done with the characters in the DC universe, I hate other things that he's done, because I still don't think that we've gotten the Superman that we're supposed to get.
No.
And the thing about it is,
sad but true.
Yeah, the thing about it is, it breaks my heart every time I think about it, because I am a huge Superman fan. Actually, the first movie I could remember seeing as a kid was Christopher Reeve's Superman.
There we go.
And being captivated by the magic of this man flying and saving lives, and his scruples about how close he is to humanity, even though he's not of our world, but he's more human than you or me in terms of how he feels about humanity and so on, right? So the thing about it is, and I have to thank Summer for opening my eyes, because she kind of breaks down things in such a way where it really gets you thinking. And the first time when I you're welcome. The first time when I watched Man of Steel, I was like, okay, I was excited, because it was like a more modern take on Superman, for want of a better word. But then she broke down certain things and pointed out to me, and when I watched it again, I really thought about it, and I was like, yeah, he missed the entire concept of who Superman is, in terms of all the destruction that happened in Metropolis during that movie. Wanton destruction, and it looked like he really didn't really care about the destruction and all the people in the city, and buildings was falling on people. And all that stuff, and he not once did he try to lead Zod away from the city.
Right.
Whereas, I don't know if you guys remember, in Superman 2, he led the Kryptonians away from the city for the final fight in the fortress.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
he couldn't take the destruction that was going on when he looked around him. All the people in pain, their faces contorted in pain and confusion and fear. And Zack Snyder just missed the entire point, and to me it felt like he never picked up a comic book.
Well, Snyder has said with a sense of pride that I don't understand. I don't read the comics, and I don't want the actors reading the comics,
Yeah,
and
it's a stupid comment.
To me, that's a stupid comment, and that's disrespectful to the fans. I have no problem with somebody taking an existing character and building on that and tweaking certain things. I have no problem with that at all. We see it all the time.
Yeah.
But to completely disregard the core of who that character is, the core elements, like what Ricardo was saying about his parents and the importance of those characters, and just do what you will with them because you have this dark, cynical, nihilistic look at the world, then I'm sorry, I try not to cuss, but seriously.
No, it's like you're crapping on all the fans. Really and truly.
Like at that point, why adapt this character?
Yes.
Yeah. That's it. He's perfection. Yeah. He's perfection in itself. And that is what makes him my favorite male character, because my favorite female obviously is Wonder Woman. But here Zack Snyder comes along, and yes, the look of the movie, it's very pleasing to the eye. And I agree with Matthew in that the score for Man of Steel was awesome. Up to now, when I hear it, gives me chills. And even the first flight sequence was amazing. But still, you missed the entire point of who Superman really is. Why have you made him so cynical and so dark? And I'm gonna bring it back up too in his in the Justice League movie, because I had a huge problem when I had a chance to sit down and mull it over again in my head about what he again did to my boy, and I don't like it. And then yeah, and like you said, I agree with you guys that Batman versus Superman. I took a page out of Matthew's book when I saw that he watched the Ultimate Edition, so I watched it as well too, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. It adds nothing extra to the story.
Nope.
I basically just look at Batman versus Superman to just Google at Henry Cavill, and to see
while he's being beaten to a pulp basically and doesn't even do much. Like think about it, like watch over if you really want to touch yourself. Watch over the 8-minute fight scene between Batman and Superman and ponder how Batman was able to overpower Superman so easily.
And it was excessive. It was overly excessive. You know? So and the other thing too is, again, it seemed as though it was edited so weird in that it did not have a really good flow to that movie at all. Yeah. It just felt like they stuck this there and they stuck that there. There was no proper continuity to it. And again, I agree with you guys. Totally terrible movie. And then when Justice League came, I was of mixed reviews for Justice League for a little while, because Joss Whedon took over, so I said we'll get a different look. We did get a different look, but it wasn't something that was satisfying to me, because the color schemes were all wrong. And the other thing about it is too, like, we all know everybody has issues, including myself, with the way that they made Henry Cavill's mouth look.
Oh God.
Right. Oh yeah, the infamous CG
thing.
Mustache gate.
Yeah, it's like, really, seriously, why? You know, so many other people have done movies and had to reshoot because they have mustache or facial hair.
No, you see,
here's
I mentioned this last time. Here was so pissed me off about mustache kid, right?
Yeah.
Even if they could have, it was cheap. Even if they did it properly and they got it right, it's still the wrong call, because he had a beard.
Yeah.
He's supposed to have a beard when he dead and he come back. Like, just give him a beard.
Yeah, they could have left the beard.
That's true.
Just give him a beard. Don't
no, you see, the thing is, they were worried that people ask, if he did, how come he come back with a beard, boy? It's like, it doesn't matter what's in the comics, I don't know.
Yeah.
and again,
by the way, there was small nitpick thing that they didn't get, but it's still pissing me off, eh? No mullet, dread. We still ain't got mullet. You know?
We still ain't got it. Still ain't got mullet.
And this is where you can still see Zack Snyder fail his fans too, because it wasn't even thought of properly, even the simplest thing like that, and you still disrespect the fans. You know, I don't know what, honestly, I don't know what the big deal is in terms of being like this crazy internet base where they were like, oh, Zack Snyder need to release his cut, big thing. You know, the only other thing I would say is that, I agree that most of the times the director's cut brings some clarity to the way that a movie flows, or it rewrites the narrative in terms of, hey, this is a way better movie 100%, right? Honestly, in my mind, the only case I have seen that happening, and again, this is probably a big bias because it's to do with Superman again, but the Richard Donner cut. The Richard Donner cut of Superman 2. I have grown up with the Richard Lester cut. But when I grew up and Richard Donner released his version, I do away with the other one. And I consider Richard Donner's version as canon for me, because it makes more sense.
It does.
You know, but again, I don't know. To me, like I told you, just certain things I like that he does, and certain things, most of the things that he does, I don't like. Because to me, you're disrespecting the fans, you're disrespecting my favorite superhero, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
And I don't like
it.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Tracy, quick thoughts on Don't worry, Cece. We're gonna save you for last, right? But you know, but let's make sure to keep it. Yeah, but let's make
I'm
sure Cece to
picturing
keep it
Cece
short
in the
because
background, just like pacing and getting worked up, firing
Yes,
up
yeah,
shadow
yes.
punching.
guys, this is the prologue. This is the prologue, right?
Sorry,
So
sorry, sorry. Yes.
we have to get into the story in a bit, but yeah, still in the prologue. Yeah, Tracy, thoughts on Zack Snyder and his contribution to the DCEU.
So here's my thing. There are two thoughts that I have where Zack is concerned. One, yes, there is a love-hate relationship where he is concerned. Um, I I'm one of those people who I like Man of Steel. Actually, I very much dig Man of Steel. I have defended um, Batman versus Superman only in the context well, actually, no. I defended Batman versus Superman because I figured out a way to rationalize it. So for me, like when I was watching this, the extent, I actually have at one point in time I had it. I kind of deleted it, but I had the deluxe edition or whatever version it's called. And I looked at it and I went back in and I thought, okay, so if you're telling me that this is basically Bruce's 9/11, and these are the responses to how a person coming out of 9/11, how they acted and how they operated out of fear and anger and everything associated with it, then for me, there was something about that sort of like, okay, I can rationalize this film. And even so, the idea of like Save Martha and all of that, as aggravating as it was, I could still live with the film. The problem that I had was when Zack decided that Superman's should come out and say in Batman vs. Superman, which is something that I still find is relatively unforgivable, is when Superman turns and says, I guess no one stays good in this world, and then flies off to fight Batman. And I thought that is a level of BS that I am not particularly here for.
Yeah.
That being said, you would hear some behind the scenes randomness. I remember when before BVS was coming out, you were hearing how the suits Sujihara and Kevin Sujihara, who is the then head of Warner Brothers, and his people were like applauding at how great Batman looks and all that kind of stuff. And then coming out of that, the word started to trickle about, well, it's a little too dark because everybody's talking about the fact that it was dark. And we also the mess that was going on with Suicide Squad, which, it has a certain Voldemort sensibility to me. We don't talk about it. We don't acknowledge it. We don't say its name. But, in terms of where Zack was going, you could see that maybe the tide was shifting between the head of the studio and Zack and his personal thing. Now, for my money, I would have, and I agree with Ricardo, I would have let him get the chance to grieve, to mourn, to take the requisite time that he needed to finish this arc of his story. And then as a studio, if you wanted to reboot the franchise, because God knows they will eventually reboot the franchise and find some other people and other directors or whatever it is like that, fine, then you can go down that road. In terms of Zack as a person, like I see him and I've been watching him over the few years and I'm like, okay, the general vexation that I felt about him is actually lessened a bit in terms of him as a person. He seems like a really, a really cool guy.
Yeah, great guy.
My problem,
he does.
Yeah.
He really does.
but like he seems like somebody you would want to have a beer with. But at the same point in time, when you come out and say things like, and this is the fault that I had with Zack, when you come out and say things like, you need to wake the F up because if you think that that superheroes don't embezzle money from their corporations and they don't kill, then you are living in a fantasy world. And I'm like, how is this guy the one who is, helming gods? You can't come to me and tell me that my gods are common G. My gods are embezzling money from their company. Bruce doesn't have to embezzle money from his company. And there's certain things that Zack says. He talks about, I think it's either Watchmen or Man of Steel, where he is talking about when you've lost your virginity to this film, come back and talk. And it's like, that is not the kind of BS that I really need. That being said, when 2017, arrived and they said that Zack was stepping aside, and it was there were logical reasons for that. And Joss at the time, and I grew up watching like Dollhouse and Buffy and all the other Josses and things, and I was like, Joss for me was like, okay, this seemed like a logical choice. He is the king of the nerds, and I went in there. And I saw it. I'm one of those people who have seen Justice League a few times. I have it here on one of my SD card thingies, the digital, and there are things in there that, for me, I like, and so I kind of miss not having in this one. There are a great deal of things that I thought was weird. And or gratuitous. Like, I will give you a random example. I don't see how zooming in on Diana's well-formed butt is going to improve the
I remember that.
meeting, there's stuff like that. There's a whole sequence in the 2017 one where Flash runs and trips,
Yes.
and then trips and lands on Diana for comic book relief, and I'm like, how is that even a thing? And this is before the other side of Joss was revealed to the rest of humanity. So, okay, that's over and done with, and I am ready to move on with my life. Let's do new things. Okay, fine. And then the Release the Snyder Cut team started to emerge, and at first I laughed it off. And then I would see Zack would post up on Instagram, like, this is how he had thought of Steppenwolf, and this is a scene with him and Ben Affleck.
Feeding the machine.
And then I remember the exact moment where I stopped. There were a few people on Instagram. There was one particular fan that I stopped following because every 2 words out of his mouth was release the Snyder Cut, to the point where, I mean, whether you love or hated Birds of Prey, everything that came out, including Birds of Prey, there was a string of ridiculousness about why is DC putting out all of these other Packer nonsense, and you could just release the Snyder Cut. And I was like, okay, that level needs to be extinguished, so I removed myself from that. And he fans that, whether or not he does it intentionally or not. Zack fans that fuel. So for me, when HBO Max, which I feel like as a streaming service, that is a brilliant move to have the thing on the streaming service. When it was revealed that he was coming back to release his cut, and more importantly, when he said that he was not, he's not taking any directorial fees, he's not taking any money director-wise, so that he can have greater creative control. I was like, brava, I accept that. Well done, you. Go do your film. Get the closure. Please let this be over and done with, because I am tired. And I saw it, and I for me, I legitimately enjoyed. It felt whole. It felt like, oh, I could see where he was going with this. I understand what the film was meant to be. Now, and we will talk about this when we actually get there. But for me, I feel like this could have still been cut down to maybe a 3-hour or 3.5 hour or something along those lines. But at the same point in time, I also accept the fact that I grew up in the Caribbean, where every Sunday we had a 4-hour Bollywood movie. So, 4 hours is not really a problem for me. But in terms of how Zack, and that's on a side, but how Zack treats superheroes versus the man himself and the visions that he has, I tend to always have a little bit of a disconnect. I will just end by saying the way how I said in my video some time back, it's the idea of, it's over. It's, sing hallelujah, and it's over.
It's over. Yeah.
For better or worse, we can move on. So that's my intro.
So to mention, well, just quick thing before, to mention, I thought they should have, made the miniseries thing. I thought it was kind of a mistake making it one movie because, you're in competition with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That was like, so I thought it was a really bad move of not doing this. And then, another thing, little small thing, and then I'll get to the next person. They should have given him a little more money because, like, some of the effects looked unfinished, in my opinion. Like,
I have noticed on that.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the effects.
Yeah, it had a lot of bad, like a couple bad compositing shots, a couple of bad, the usual stuff now. Like, this still feeling unfinished. But whatever, we get it.
Yeah. Don't worry, CC, we haven't forgotten you, right? But, still in the prologue phase, right? Summer, quick thoughts on Zack Snyder and his contribution to the DCEU.
I'm gonna try to be really quick because I so want to hear what Cece has to say. Um,
We, we
so
all we all can't wait.
yeah,
Oh
so
yeah.
like you guys, I discovered Zach through the Dawn of the Dead movie, and I instantly fell in love with it because I think it's one of the best horror remakes ever done. I'm like, who did this? I need to see more of what he can do. And then I think I saw the Watchmen after, Watchmen, sorry, and I actually love that book so much, and I thought what he did was all that could be done until, of course, HBO did what they did. But I thought what he did was like, yes, this is awesome. This is the best you could do with this. 300 is a movie that I initially adored, but I've outgrown it. Because you get older, you learn things, and then you look at a movie that you've seen before, and you're like, oh my God, no, this is not right. So on a visual level, I still enjoy it, but that's all I take out of it.
I
And
got
then,
you.
of course, when I heard he was going to do Man of Steel, I was very excited because I know visually what he's capable of. And I thought this is the right person for this. But like I said, I saw it. I came out of the cinema initially very satisfied. But then I remember on the drive home, the more I kept thinking about the characterization of the Kents and of Clark, I just kept getting angrier and angrier. And I think that's why I'm so soured by that film. There's a lot there I still absolutely love. But I just overall, it's one of those movies I find it difficult to want to rewatch. Then we jump into Batman v Superman, which is just it's just ugly. That's ugly is the best word I could use to describe it. It's a mess, and it's a film that for me it has a boner for Batman, and that's it. That's all it's about. You know, and
Yeah, it's
defe-
primarily a
yeah,
Batman movie. Like,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
and
with
defending.
Superman tacked on after the fact.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the whole it just gets worse. The characterization of Superman just gets so much worse in that film. Lois is never developed. Lois is, and I'm going to get into that with Justice League as well. Lois is such a powerful female character in the comic books in her own right. And the fact that she's human makes it all that more amazing who she is and what she stands for. And that character, Zack Snyder, to me, treats that character like, well, we have to have her here because it's a Superman movie, but I don't need to do anything with her. And then, of course, we had Justice League. And because of my disdain for Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman, I was actually one of those people that was excited at the prospect of Joss Whedon taking over. Because again, like you guys, I grew up on Whedon as well. This is, pre knowing everything we know now. So I was like, yeah, I want to see this. And I did. And it felt like I was watching something that was incomplete. It's so the colors, the visuals, everything just I kept as I'm watching it, I'm thinking this feels like a first draft that you show to the studio and say this is what I have in mind. So there's not much there besides for me though. I will say this. What Whedon did with Superman made me smile. It brought joy to my heart because I saw glimpses of the character that I know and love in those moments, and there's some scenes there that I absolutely adore. Of course, they don't show up in this Snyder version. So most of it is a mess, and it's such a wasted opportunity, and the part of what I think we should have done. But there's still stuff there that I'm not going to dismiss it completely. So coming into this now, like you guys have said before, I watched it. I had no excitement for it going in, and it was just I'm watching this because this is what we do. We review movies,
Right.
um, that's what I got. I went into it with that feeling,
Yeah.
and we'll get into how we feel about it now. But I would say
Well,
I am with
right after
yeah,
CC, right?
after CC, yes. What I mean by that, after CC. But again, like you guys, I am of the I'm just glad it's done and we can move on sort of camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a feeling that a majority of us fall within that. I think all of us actually basically fall within that camp. All right, but before we get to part one, right? Last but not least, CC, quick but very potent thoughts on Zack Snyder and his contribution
All
to
right.
MCU. Let's go.
Here's the problem. here's the
You see, the
here's
problem is,
is okay. My relationship with Snyder is generally at this point a negative one, and it was actually a lot more positive before watching the Snyder cut. But like, because I feel like the Snyder cut for me was like the final nail in my process of falling out of love with Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
Because when the man first burst on the scene, and I feel like some of the audience with shorter cultural attention spans will forget this, but when Snyder first burst on the scene, he was such a breath of fresh air, especially when it came to genre filmmaking, because we had been in this doldrums of like gritty, realistic, grounded, super, and like even though Zack is gritty, I don't know. He was one of the big like formalist directors. Like his whole thing was, I'm going to emphasize if I'm going to adapt comic books, I'm going to emphasize that this is a comic book, high saturation, slow mo, a lot of emphasis on like very strong like picturesque images. It's that neo-classicalism that Ricardo was talking about, and I mean, and you see this even in Dawn of the Dead, which I still enjoy despite falling out of love with the man. But that's more for Gunn's script than Snyder's direction. But what happens over time? It's kind of a similar thing happens to Joss Whedon. God, I remember seeing a picture on the internet of Joss Whedon wearing a "This is what a feminist looks like" shirt, and I'm like, images that have aged poorly. But the thing with Snyder is we've had this cultural process of falling out of love with him because as we have moved on, he hasn't, right? So not only have our comic book movies embraced, and our blockbusters in general, embraced the more like formalistic approach with like heightened colors, a lot more visually pleasing, embracing the more over the top aspects, and not trying to make everything so gritty and relatable, but as so much as like embracing what makes it unique and like that. Like I feel like the MCU starts kind of in the more gritty category with Iron Man, but by the time we get to the Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy, we've embraced a more, allowing our comic book movies and our genre entertainment in general to be more formalist, and it's been wonderful. We've only gotten more that way as time's gone on.
Yes.
The problem with Snyder is that once you surround him with other more formalist filmmakers, you're left with nothing but his ideology.
Yep.
And the man is brilliant. Like the man is quite a wonderful, humble human being from all the interviews. He's a very kind, genuine soul. So it's always so confusing why his films are so bile filled. Like, we haven't even talked about the Maggie Mae Fish essay where she talks about how every Snyder movie has the same ideology. Everyone is basically evil and the world is a horrible place, and the only thing you can hope for is to die a glorious death, which is why every single Zack Snyder hero is motivated by the desire to die a glorious death, which is bizarre coming from a man who is so, sincere in most of his interviews, but all of his films have the same theme. And so he was like, when I watched Man of Steel the first time, before I even knew who the man was, I watched it and I'm like, this rings so hollow for me. Like, I'm wondering, because here's the thing. I think it was Matthew who said earlier that it felt like a contemporary take on Superman. Why do we need to adapt Superman to modern times, right? Why do we, and also, better question, why does adapting Superman to modern times mean more cynical, right?
Yeah.
Why?
Good point. Good point. Mm-hmm.
Where is
That's
that
a good question.
Where is that equation coming in? Like, why does losing the hope, losing the optimism, losing this is what the best of humanity has to offer, why does losing all that mean more modern? No, if anything, we need, and this is why Marvel worked so well with the character of Captain America. What we actually need, for troubled times such as ours, we need characters that we can turn to and look up to, and characters that we can inspire us and fill us with hope, which is what Superman was born to be. This was a character created by the children of Jewish immigrants fleeing the Nazis. Their whole point was they wanted to create a character that was the best of humanity.
Right.
So Snyder's cynical approach of I don't read the comics and like if you once you've lost your virginity to this film, talk to me, is all posturing nonsense. It's the most immature of seemingly mature ideas, which is the real world and adulthood is all about cynicism. It's grimdark philosophy. It's this whole idea that like everything in the adult world is grim and cynical and everyone's out to get everybody. None of these are actually ideas that are inherently more adult. But, and this goes right back into the cult of Snyder, do you know who embraces these philosophies wholeheartedly? Young men. Especially young men who are deeply insecure about the things that they love and want to impress upon the world how grown up they are. To them, Zack Snyder is the second coming of Jesus. Because his whole MO is, I'm going to take these characters that you grew up with and I'm going to make them adults, quote unquote. So every Snyder movie, I was never a fan of 300. Like I always was like, I've always considered it an overrated film. Even if you turn your brain off, once we get straight into the misogyny, I'm like, nope, my brain is turning itself back on. I can't keep it off. Watchmen was, and I'm gonna say this for the sake of transparency, it was one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. And then over time, I have fallen out of love with it more and more. And then recently, I was talking to a colleague who was talking about why it is that film aesthetic, even the scene when the comedian assaults the Silk Spectre, why is that scene shot like it's still trying to aestheticize what's happening? Like, why is it still an attractive scene? This is supposed to be a traumatic moment, and Snyder doesn't know how to shoot it in a way that's like actually traumatic or serious or like challenging. And it's like that was kind of the moment where I'm like, no. And especially since what I felt like from the HBO Watchmen series, HBO Watchmen, is that like that show counteracts Snyder by leaning more into the surreal aspects of Watchmen, the strangeness. Because part of Watchmen's genius, part of Alan Moore's genius when he still wrote comics, was embracing the strangest parts of comic books and embracing the really weird shit. Like, you can tell that Snyder doesn't get that, and he doesn't read comics by the fact he chose to cut out the squid, like the alien monster.
Yes.
So I'm on the fence of thinking that the cutting out the squid was a good call. Still,
I do.
I think so too, especially like how they
what I would say,
worked it into this guy's plan.
Yeah, what I would say is I think he never, I don't think he really get Watchmen because it's how he still frames Rorschach, right?
Rorschach as the hero.
His hero.
Like, he's not.
Exactly. He frames Rorschach very heroic.
And he was never meant to be that type of character.
Exactly.
Never.
Right.
Like, Rorschach becomes another one of Snyder's heroes.
Yeah.
And like, so when Man of Steel comes around, and then we get BVS, which is one of the worst comic book movies of all time, like easily. Like, that movie single-handedly dragged comic book filmmaking back like 5 years. And all the discourse around it continues to drag the conversation back, because Zack Snyder's core philosophies feel more at home with the 90s, 2000s obsession with grimdark than they do in a more modern context where we actually dare to hope again in a pop culture arena. So we just end up, and like, DC has moved past Snyder. Like, none of DC on film has more and more moved past Zack Snyder. We don't need Zack Snyder's vision for DC anymore. And you see this because every time a new DC movie comes out, more people move away from Snyder, more towards that. And yet the people who still cling to Snyder, that cult, get more and more, like, they get more intense, they get more passionate, they get more, like, I feel like every time a new DC movie comes out that's further and further away from Snyder's vision for DC, the Snyder fan base gets more and more like personally offended, like more and more personally offended, more and more personally upset, culminating, of course, in like something like the Birds of Prey release. And I still maintain Birds of Prey is, like, he all knows, one of my favorite film that came out last year. And it's a movie that the Snyder cult hated because not only is
Not
it
surprised.
With a vengeance.
With a vengeance. They were prepared to take it down if they had to. And the fact that critics didn't want to watch it because, critics don't want to watch comic book movies because comic book movies are the death of cinema is like only added fuel to the fire. So when the Snyder Cut was announced, I was actually backtracking. When Justice League came out, I didn't watch it. I saw Thor Ragnarok instead, never looked back. Until I did eventually I am a pop culture scholar. I need to see this movie so I can tell everyone why it's bad. So I watched it, and the problem with Justice League is that Justice League isn't just the competing visions of two very different filmmakers. It's the competing visions of two very different filmmakers at their worst. Like this isn't Zack Snyder. This is BVS Zack Snyder. This isn't Whedon. This is Age of Ultron. Joss Whedon. Yep. So literally, I mean, some of Ray Fisher's more recent comments were very revealing. We was talking about how that movie was basically it was a do-over for Snyder, not Snyder, for Whedon. Basically, that Whedon spent the whole time on set telling everyone that hey, this is my chance to show everyone that all the things I did in Age of Ultron that everyone criticized were actually really smart. I'm going to do them, and now you're all going to like it this time. Except we didn't. And we moved on. And then they announced the Snyder Cut, and they announced that it was going to happen. I hated the movement from the beginning. I hated the people involved. I hated the ways in which they were framing it. And I was, I never wanted to see this damn thing. But then, they announced it, and they came, we got it, and it came with all this fanfare. And as we got closer and closer to the release, I just had this building sense of dread. I originally was going to ignore it, but then Matthew invited me on the podcast, and I'm like, you know what? This is a great chance for some exorcism, just to get some crap off of my chest.
You're welcome.
Very much. To get some stuff off my chest about this, and I was like, this is I'm done. I'm going to do this, and I don't have to think about this ever again. I'm glad I did, because I don't even really want to watch his new movie coming out, Army of the Dead, after this. I'm done with the man. Maybe when he
it's not a sequel to Dawn of the Dead, right? So
no, it's loosely
in
the same world. But once we get this, I'm not even interested in seeing that at this point, because I'm I do not care about Zack Snyder. I am so done with his ideology, the aesthetics he pushes, which now that I'm looking back compared to other filmmakers who are better at this kind of thing, I feel Snyder's 300 isn't from a formalistic standpoint nearly as impressive as something like the Wachowski's Speed Racer, right? Which leads so much more into formalist ways of telling a story that Snyder without and bonus points, it actually has hope, and it doesn't have misogyny. So it sounds like a win all round, really. But no, I'm done with this man. I wish him all the best. He sounds like he's had a very difficult life, and I have no personal issues with him. My beef is entirely as an artist. I'm very happy that his fans have learned that he's a nicer person than they are, because it means that this whole restore the Snyderverse movement that is trying to get off the ground is probably not going to happen now.
Right.
Well,
no, it's already started.
Snyder himself has said that he wants to do. He wants it over with. He wants to move on, and I hope that's true. I really do.
Yeah.
Because I want to see
move on.
something, as you said. I mean, I can't get behind somebody who is making comic book movies but seems to hate comic books. I can't relate those two things,
Yeah,
So,
what they represent too, yeah.
and then you get what I got out of Shazam and what I got out of Aquaman, and I got something that for me feels like I love comic books, and I get that you guys love it too. So I'm gonna do this right.
Right. One of my favorite qualifications when Kevin Feige is screening potential writers and directors for Marvel is he makes sure they're comic book fans already. Zack Snyder is not a comic book fan. He's a fan of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. He's not which has, by the way, been a passion project of his for a long time. And Lord knows some studio is going to greenlight that, and then we're all in trouble. Like, oh my God, we don't need that. We absolutely do not need that. But if we might get it one of these days, and it makes me upset. But no. And I mean, there's a larger trend with Snyder, and like I'm not going to put all of the love for him into like misogyny, because like toxic masculinity, because like there are a lot of people who approach him from an aesthetics standpoint, and I'm like, okay, I can see that. And like, but I don't know. There's we'll get into this a little more when we get to the movie, but there's a whole lens of viewing Snyder and seeing him as some kind of, not just from like a triumph of this fake false maturity, but then also this like this weird kind of vulgar auteurism thing that's kind of becoming more of a thing on the internet in the last 10 years. And we will get into that as it comes up relevant in the review. Oh my God, because if ever you wanted a text for just how backwards all of that ideology, I mean, a lot of the way the popular version of auteurism is, here's the movie for it. But like, oh good Lord, I'm done with Snyder. I was glad to, even though this was a miserable 4 hours, I was glad to have to watch it knowing that there'd be a cathartic release afterwards and like getting to talk about it. But like, no, I am ready to be done, and I'm ready to get all of my thoughts of him off my chest. I have issues with the way he handles Superman. I will get to that as they come up, because there are a couple moments. There are some.
I'm feeling that bile coming up there, CC, right?
There are some lightning rod moments that are like, this right here is the problem I have with the way he handles Superman. But yes, so short version, I don't care for him. I don't care for him very much. No.
All right. Hey, this is Matthew Bailey, and I hope you've enjoyed this segment of the BS Beats and Bailey podcast. If you'd like to hear the full episode, hit up my link tree. On the other side of my head are 2 videos you can check out. Like this video if you like it, feel free to subscribe and hit the bell as well. Thanks for listening, and until the next one, take care, peace.